from the Agnes Empire. He questions whether his elder sister, Vanessa, has been concealing someone of this nature. The knight confirms this to be accurate and unveils further details. It's not the Duchess's own child, but rather an illegitimate offspring of a woman who served as a maid within the duchy. Marcus is intrigued by the situation and remarks that Babel alone is a precious asset they might not encounter again within the empire. However, he expresses a sense of envy towards Duke Agnes, who now possesses two remarkable individuals as treasures. The knight supplements this by mentioning that the princes are also exceptionally talented individuals destined to make waves in the world. Nevertheless, Marcus refutes this notion, asserting his certainty that while a few might be born with the aptitude for becoming emperor, they often lack significant battle prowess. The emperor's assessment of individuals seems to fall short, even though the present princes are also endowed with remarkable abilities. This could be attributed to the fact that Emperor Marcus himself possessed formidable strength akin to that of a master, leading his expectations to become exceedingly stringent. Perhaps due to this background, his pursuit of exceptional talents verges on the excessive. Marcus reflects on the possibility that if Duke Agnes is no longer concealing his second child, it could imply that this child possesses a capability similar to Babel's. Yet, the knight divulges unexpected information that this newcomer has defeated Babel, leaving Marcus aback. This revelation prompts him to contemplate whether this individual is older than Babel, but Knight reveals he is a 9-year-old kid. The emperor can't comprehend how a child who turned 9 this year beat the continent's best, and then assumes that people will be making a move to try to see that child's skills for themselves soon. The knight concurs that his prediction is accurate because soon, there will be a dispatch of the Imperial Castle's Order of Knights on the request from Agnes Duchy to sum up the kid's mana. After all, it is suspected that the child is already close to the level of a C-rank knight. Marcus is taken aback by the revelation of a 9-year-old C-rank knight, recognizing it as a stroke of fortune for the duchy's empire. Intrigued to witness this exceptional knight, he regrets that he won't have the chance due to the political intrigues surrounding the situation. Nevertheless, he orders his aide to dispatch a prince to accompany them, believing that an emperor should possess the discernment to identify exceptional talents. In contrast, the step-brothers are engaged in a fierce duel, and Joshua seems dominant as he gathers his mana in his fist and smacks Babel aside. Babel's ire is stoked by the fact that Joshua can amass mana directly into his bare fist, amplifying the force of his strike even without a weapon. Meanwhile, the protagonist confidently asserts that he can discern Babel's intentions from his expression and declare that he will help him realize how scary the martial arts Babel looks down upon is. Babel tries to thrust his sword at Joshua, but he counters by utilizing an aura explosion, effectively deflecting his attack and overpowering him. Babel remains unwilling to fully acknowledge it, though he grudgingly comprehends that the bastard is remarkably stronger than him. Radiating a formidable aura, the protagonist issues a stern caution, urging Babel to elevate his strength and never forget the sensation of defeat suffered at the hands of someone he had underestimated. Joshua asserts that if he acts according to his own wishes, he will mercilessly tear Babel apart, reducing him to mere shreds for daring to insult him and his mother. However, the protagonist claims to let him go this time since he sees a pure passion for military power for the first time in Babel's eyes, then issues a stern warning that if Babel's attitude doesn't change, he will render Babel incapable of ever holding a sword with that hand again. As he departs, he reminds Babel not to overlook the evident gap between their eye levels, which wells up his eyes. The next morning, the protagonist feels fatigued from exerting excessive mana without respite. His mana control has become more fluid since he absorbed Lukia's main self, yet the existence of side effects raises questions about his body's capacity to manage such a mana load. A knock on the door startles him, and assuming it's Kane, he quickly opens it. However, there is someone he doesn't know, so he asks her to introduce herself. She introduces herself that she is Cheryl, the daughter of Font Duchy. Trying to be candid, Cheryl mentions that she knows Joshua's 3-year age gap, which she believes allows her to speak comfortably. While stepping inside his room, she suggests he can address her as Big Sis and proposes to continue their conversation. But Joshua halts her way, menacingly urging her to leave immediately, and slams the door shut in her face. Shortly after, there's another knock on the door, and Joshua's frustration escalates as he assumes it's Cheryl again, not grasping his intention to be left alone. When he opens the door, he is ready to reprimand her, but to his surprise, it's not Cheryl but Kane. Joshua's anger subsides, and he apologizes for his earlier outburst, as he gets the wrong person. Joshua then queries Kane about the progress of the tasks he assigned. The knight reports that he has completed the preparations as instructed but remains puzzled about the reasons behind the Earl's requests. Joshua confidently asserts that Cain must trust and follow his lead. Eventually, he will understand the purpose. The next day at Duke Agnes' large sparring field, where all the centurions have assembled, 2 centurion knights approach Rolls. They question him about the whereabouts of his comrades, Lloyd and Gord, speculating whether it's accurate that Joshua defeated them. Without responding, Rolls turns his face around, which prompts them to realize that his behavior has been unusual for some time. They speculate whether his persistent harassment of Joshua might have somehow resulted in his affliction being transferred to Rolls, one of the wonders who has summoned the centurions to assemble at this location. His companion replies that a member of the Order of the Crimson Knights issued the call, and he anticipates that the training for the day will be rigorous. Shortly after, Chiffin arrives, accompanied by Joshua. They extend greetings to the Centurion Knights, but Joshua's presence sparks unease within Rolls, who wonders about the reason behind Earl Joshua's attendance. The Knight Chiffin announces that a new instructor will assist them with today's lesson. Joshua introduces himself, stating that he will be leading their training for the day, which startles them. He emphasizes that as centurions under Duke Agnes, their role is crucial as commanders on the front line during battles. Due to this, their skills are of utmost importance. He informs them that he's there to assess their abilities and menacingly urges everyone to approach him. The centurions mock him as they think he is playing around. Chiffin suggests that even though he is the Earl, the centurions might cause dire conditions, while the centurions sarcastically remark that Joshua might get hurt, which will insult them. Joshua steps down the stairs and brandishes the spear at Rolls to inquire whether he also believes the other centurion's remarks. In response, Rolls abruptly denies, asserting that he would never think that. The protagonist sternly admonishes him, rebuking him for not fulfilling his promise to relay the message as instructed. The centurion guy abruptly kneels and implores for forgiveness. However, Joshua maintains his firm stance, declaring that he won't grant forgiveness a second time, recounting Rolf's prior attempt to harm his mother. He states that he could have killed Rolf for that act but chose to provide him with an opportunity instead. However, Joshua laments that he has squandered that chance, reflecting on whether he aspires to follow the same path as Lloyd and Gort. The sudden revelation startles the other centurions, leading them to wonder if the Earl had confronted and defeated those two. Rolls keeps pleading for another chance. However, the protagonist asserts that there is no second chance. However, because he is a centurion of Duke Agnes, Joshua declares he will protect Rolf's pride. He challenges Rolf to raise his sword, offering a unique proposition. If he manages to defeat him, Joshua will overlook his prior confrontation as though nothing transpired. Rolf mulls over the proposal, thinking he should seize the opportunity since his adversary is still young. He believes that if he performs well, there might be a chance for him to emerge victorious. With determination, he readies his sword and launches an attack against Joshua. However, the protagonist remains steadfast and employs the lightning slash technique, effortlessly repelling Rolf's assault and tumbling him aside. Joshua then declares that judging an opponent on their appearance will result in his life being taken on the battlefield. He urges that if anyone still has suspicions about his abilities, they can confront him again. In response, the 23rd Centurion leader steps forward and greets Earl Joshua. This gesture prompts all the Centurion leaders to express their respect and greetings. Chiffin is deeply impressed by this display and is excited to witness how Earl Joshua has lived up to his expectations, and he pledges his full support to Earl Joshua's endeavors. On the other hand, in Duke Agnes' guest room, Lady Cheryl is in despair due to Joshua's cold demeanor. Suddenly, Cox barges in there and excitedly informs that the Order of the Imperial Knights will soon arrive at the duchy. Despite the news, Cheryl's expressions remain unchanged as she puts her head down on a pillow, asking him not to bother her for the day. Cox abruptly ponders whether she is hurt somewhere, as she hasn't looked great since the morning if something happened. Cheryl exclaims in frustration not to bother her, urging him to follow her father's instructions. Cox responds that he momentarily forgot about the Lord's orders, to which Cheryl reminds him not to lose sight of their purpose for being there. Cox apologizes and assures her he will prioritize carrying out their Lord's orders. In contrast, Duke Agnes summons Joshua to his office to inquire whether he executed a centurion. The protagonist concurs, acknowledging that the Duke must be familiar with the centurion's behavior and disrespectful comments about his mother. He follows military law by immediately executing the centurion who insulted a noble. The Duke wonders that if he himself had been there, he would have sliced them with a blade. However, he asks Joshua what just happened is unfortunate. Joshua clarifies that the incident occurred for a different reason. He explains that just a few days ago, he was seen as the son of a concubine, treated as lowly, and even thrown into the stables. He says it's difficult for him to gain their approval merely because he has gained strength, while the other reason is that he wanted to plant fear and shock in them, so they could never mistreat him and his mother again. Joshua declares that he wanted to show that he also had the Duke's blood. He had to demonstrate where all the centurions were gathered properly. Duke Agnes gets up from his seat, asserting him to finish this discussion and that Joshua should slowly prepare to leave for his Mana evaluation today because the order of the Imperial Knights has been dispatched. Joshua concurs that he will leave soon as his preparations are over. Outside the Duke's office, Armstrong, the first leader of the Order of the Golden Mane Knights, is surprised that 2C rank who haven't come of age would come from their duchy. When Chiffin frustratedly retort that one of them is a son of a concubine, Armstrong mocks him, stating that he is pissed that his position is at stake because young Master Babel lost to young Master Joshua, due to which Chiffin starts quarreling with him. Soon, the Duke arrives there, remarking that the Order of the Imperial Knights is about to arrive, and they are already bickering. They greet the Duke while Armstrong privately contemplates if that person is Joshua and remarks that he doesn't seem strong. Shortly after, the caravan arrives, prompting Chiffin to be startled to see a whole battalion for the Imperial Palace and wonder who could have arrived. As Caesar Van Britten disembarks from his royal carriage, Duke Agnes is startled because he is the fourth prince, while Joshua can't believe this moment has arrived so soon. Several days earlier, Knight Captain Sir Joker of the First Army of the Imperial Knights was seen berating another knight, incredulous that a mere knight would presume to give him orders. Unexpectedly, a mysterious individual appeared, informing Joker that a mission from Madame Vanessa had been assigned to him, and he had to carry it out. Fast forward to the present, Joker arrives at the duchy with Prince Caesar, driven by the malicious determination to ensure that the individual known as Joshua never wields a sword again. Caesar comments that the rumored Earl Joshua stands before him. However, Joshua's expression turns fierce at the sight of Caesar. When Caesar's adjutant advises Joshua to show respect in the presence of a prince, the protagonist retorts with sarcasm, stating that under the Empire's sky, there can only be one son aside from the lord they serve. He asserts that the respect of all knights in the country is reserved solely for the emperor, and reflects on whether there is any reason to respect the self-proclaimed fourth prince, whose identity isn't clear, while Caesar's expressions seem unbothered. However, his remark enrages Valmont Don Braun, Knight Vice Captain of the Ninth Order of Imperial Knights, who steps ahead, wielding his sword, asserts that Joshua must be out of his mind, and revealing that he heard Joshua is a son of a concubine who used to clean horse dung until recently. The tense situation escalates when Armstrong draws his sword in defense of Joshua. Valmont cynically remarks that it's not as if it's for Duke Agnes and wonders if he is covering up for that lowly child of a concubine, to which Armstrong asserts that Sir Joshua is also a legitimate part of the Agnes Duchy. The Duke menacingly intervenes, reminding them they are in front of the prince, and warns them not to act recklessly, then urges Joshua to apologize to the prince for the turmoil he has caused because of his hasty words and deeds. Caesar comments that the situation is acceptable since Joshua's perspective isn't entirely unjustified, while his adjutant interjects, cautioning the prince about the potential repercussions on the imperial family's authority. Caesar responds that as a relatively powerless fourth prince, clinging to his own pride would only subject him to ridicule. He then steps ahead, concurring that Joshua is correct that only the Majesty Emperor deserves the respect of all the knights in the empire. Being a kind prince, Caesar claims to be all right, emphasizing the imperial knights not to worry about it. Also, the knights prove their skills by their own merit. He believes that Earl Joshua is well aware of how worthless the empty words of a knight without any skills are. The protagonist is well aware that, as always, Caesar is trying to change the situation with his silver tongue. However, Joshua remains resolute that things will be different this time around, recalling his intention to seize the opportunity to strike at Caesar's throat when he least expects it. He then walks towards Caesar, claiming he is ready for every challenge. However, his cocky behavior in front of the prince enrages the Joker, who then requests Caesar to leave the Mana identification to him as he would like to personally check whether Earl Joshua has sufficient skills to back his speech and actions. Considering the safety of Earl Joshua, Prince Caesar grants permission to Sir Joker to take over, who has surpassed the level of expert B rank because of their difference in rank. Meanwhile, Joker thanks the prince with a malicious grin and claims to assess Joshua's mana precisely. Subsequently, in the Agnes Duchy training hall, everyone takes their seats to witness the impending intense duel. As the Joker notices that Joshua has chosen an iron rod as his weapon, He contemplates whether he is jesting or if he believes they are playing a game. He mocks the protagonist, stating that everything feels easy on him since people around him praise him for having some talent. In response, Joshua fires back with sarcasm, remarking that the Imperial Knights must be selected based on their proficiency in talking rather than their skills, to which the delinquent Joker comments that he will regret his words. Suddenly, Joshua launches an unexpected attack which catches the rivalry off guard. However, he abruptly manages to deflect the attempt and retain his composure, asserting that Joshua's weapon is nothing more than a toy, and declaring that Joshua will be done if he closes the distance. Joshua smirks, recognizing that many adversaries think closing the space between them would be enough to exploit a weakness. However, he's secretly prepared for such situations through rigorous training undertaken a long time ago. Joshua then maintains the distance with consecutive moves and employs the first form, Lightning Slash, while Joker skillfully counters the attack with impressive maneuvering, downplaying its effectiveness. The prince is impressed by Joshua's skills, stating that fighting on equal footing with a B-rank knight at that age is incredible. Not only that, his skills baffle the Imperial Knight Valmont, who wonders what in the world is that spearmanship, as he has never seen that technique before. While skillfully evading Joshua's relentless attacks, Joker contemplates that if the duel continues at this pace, it will end prematurely, and this outcome wouldn't bode well for Lady Vanessa, as she will snap his head. Feeling the pressure, he decides to take a calculated risk to turn the tide of the test. As the battle unfolds, the protagonist notes that the B-rank knight is indeed operating at a significantly higher level compared to Babel, and the control of mana is getting harder bit by bit, which might cause the holy power and mana to run into each other. Seizing the opportunity, Joker makes his move through gambling. Joshua manages to block it by gathering mana into one point, but his mouth starts gushing blood. The sudden escalation in Joker's mana level catches the attention of Armstrong, who recognizes the danger posed to Joshua. He quickly informs the Duke about the perilous situation. However, the Duke advises him to be patient and continue observing the unfolding events. Joker gains confidence, boosted by his recent successful move, but Joshua remains unfazed. As the battle continues, Joker rapidly advances to execute his next move, aiming to overpower Joshua. However, this action triggers an explosion of mana, capturing the attention and curiosity of everyone watching the duel. Caught off guard by the unexpected surge of power, Joker struggles to comprehend what happened. An unfamiliar force seems to have pushed him back, leaving him bewildered and off balance. Meanwhile, Joshua remains composed and stationary, firmly holding his cherished spear, Lukia. As Joshua anticipates the impending clash of Joker's B-rank sword aura and his own C-rank mana, he recognizes his perilous situation. He knows that a collision between the two forces could lead to severe internal injuries for him. Just as Joker confidently advances towards him, believing his victory is assured, Joshua calls out to his trusted companion, Lukia. In response to his plea, Lukia awakens and exerts its extraordinary power, forcefully pushing Joker back and preventing the collision. This astounding display leaves Chiffin astonished, witnessing the mana-saturated artifact's historical moment in awe-inspiring might. Observing Joshua's exceptional abilities, Prince Caesar acknowledges his unique talent, even though his understanding of battle might be limited, and commands Valmont that it's enough for the test. Meanwhile, Joshua contemplates how Joker must be feeling, having his attack blocked. Joker admits his confusion and acknowledges that this is the end of their bout. Valmont steps in to express gratitude for Joker's efforts and officially announces the conclusion of the test. He is intrigued by how Joshua intercepted Joker's B-rank attack in a mere C-rank knight mana test. Valmont is confident in Joshua's prowess and doesn't believe the best genius of the Empire could surpass him. With a sword in hand, he proclaims that, as per the prince's orders, Joshua von Agnes, the second son of Agnes Duchy, has now attained the rank of a C-rank knight. He raises his sword in the traditional knighting gesture, signifying the official recognition of Joshua's new level. As Prince Caesar and a vagrant applaud Joshua's impressive skills, the protagonist's inner thoughts reveal that he has no intention of playing along with this C-rank knight stuff because he doesn't want to show them his weak state. However, he is determined to take revenge on them at a decisive time, as they assaulted him in his past life. Duke Agnes steps ahead and inquires about Joshua's well-being. The protagonist kid notes that this is an impression he hasn't encountered in his past life and responds that he is doing fine. Valmont presents him with the Highness's sword, and Joshua triumphantly raises his sword, thinking that he had never witnessed that before in the entire continent. It was the birth of the youngest mana user. Later that night, a conference occurred in the Agnes Duchy's grand conference room under Duke Agnes's supervision. Count Angel, a vassal of the Agnes Duchy, requested the first leader of the Order of Gold Main Knights, Armstrong, to report on an important matter. Armstrong reported that all the Gold Main Knights who had been recently dispatched had suddenly returned. The reason for their return was the significant increase in monsters emerging from the creature's forest. Armstrong explained that the leading cause of the Knights' return was the appearance of a black ogre among the monster mob. The black ogre was the most formidable creature within the black creature's forest, also known as the monster's haven. It was a resilient troll that could tear through bodies as if they were made of paper. Only individuals with considerable strength, such as high-ranking magicians of the 4th class or higher or knights with a B rank or higher, could match it in combat. The news of the Black Ogre's presence raised tension among the members of the conference, who began to worry about the possibility of the monster encroaching on their lands. Taking note of their concerns, the Duke assured the assembly that he would personally address this matter and urged them to report the next issue. Armstrong remarks that the next point is regarding the 5 duchies, prompting the Duke to wonder whether there is a separate reason that Cheryl and Cox came here, then instructs the knight to explain that matter privately. Count Angel commands them to raise their hand if anyone has something to report. The adjutant Chiffin abruptly raises his stand, stating he has something about Earl Joshua. A buzz of conversation begins as people start discussing Joshua's recent achievements, particularly his becoming the youngest C-rank knight, surpassing even Earl Babel. Chiffin continues, mentioning that Joshua was initially quite frail to the point of suggesting he had a genetic mana disability. He expresses his perplexity over how Joshua could have transformed from such a state to a C-rank knight so quickly, believing that the explanation can't be solely attributed to talent. He speculated that Joshua might have somehow obtained power from creatures or demonic beings, as he found it challenging to comprehend the situation otherwise. He reasons that Earl Joshua was using a weapon no one had ever seen before and ponders whether artifacts are saturated with magic, the only weapons that can change shape. Furthermore, Earl Joshua's weapon was closer to a spear, and they couldn't think such power could be contained in a mere spear. Chiffin's suspicions made him consider the possibility of demonic magic being involved in Joshua's newfound strength. He presented these thoughts to the gathered individuals, fueling their curiosity and uncertainty about Joshua's abilities. Suddenly, Joshua steps into the conference room and asks Chiffin if he is that curious about his skill, then it should be fine for him to test it personally. He adds that Chiffin should be able to tell whether he borrowed power from a creature if he goes up against him. Chiffin tries to control his anger, contemplating that Bastard is making him wield his sword against someone with his master's blood running through his veins, so if he makes a wrong move, he realizes that any misstep could result in incurring his master's wrath. The protagonist mocks him for hesitating and ponders whether he is scared despite being one of the 4 chief pillars leading the duchy. Chiffin's anger flares, and he stands up with a menacing aura, declaring that Joshua has crossed a line. The atmosphere in the room becomes even more tense due to their confrontation, and his menacing aura causes discomfort in the meeting attendees. The Duke intervenes, attempting to maintain control over the situation. He points out a crucial aspect everyone seems to be overlooking, specifically, the presence of the Imperial Order of Knights and the chief magician from the Imperial Castle, Evegrant, during Joshua's mana evaluation. Armstrong adds that if Joshua had utilized power from creatures or demons, at least one of these present experts would have detected it. This revelation injects a new layer of complexity into the discussion. Duke Agnes takes charge of the situation and announces that while the matter concerning Joshua seems to have been partially resolved, it doesn't mean all doubts have been completely cleared. He emphasizes that there are still things they need to investigate and numerous questions they want to ask. The Duke acknowledges that Joshua's rapid growth is a subject of inquiry not only among the vassals but also for him. With a purpose in mind, he proposes a way to properly assess Joshua's strength by accompanying him to the Black Creature's forest. The knights ask the Duke if he planned to go to the Black Forest, as he should leave this all to the knights because it was dangerous for him, and he had to travel to Acadia. Armstrong also agreed with them as he didn't want him to get injured. But the Duke wondered who they were worried about and said he planned to send Joshua to the Imperial Academy after cleaning the Black Forest creatures. Because his talent is undeniable, he gives him a fair chance by following the strict rules of the Agnes family. Chiffon was worried that if he got stronger and got beyond their reach, Earl Babel might get pulled into a war of succession, so he decided to make an excuse to keep him away. The protagonist requested his father to let his mother accompany him, but Chiffon said it was impossible as Lady Vanessa might not stand by if his mother went with him. The protagonist questions if he is suggesting the Duke needs permission to do such trivial things, making him speechless, and he realizes he is trying to toy with him. He justified that he didn't want rumors regarding favoritism to spread, but Duke allowed his mother to accompany him. He asked the knights if they objected to his decision, but no one objected before leaving. He instructed Armstrong and Joshua to report with the dispatched knights in his room after the report from the Font family was sorted. While he was leaving, Earl Babel arrived, greeted him, and apologized for being late as he needed some time to ponder, and his father asked him if he had something to report. He called the protagonist, who answered him informally, enraged Chiffon, and told him to watch his manner publicly. The protagonist wonders if he is his spokesman as he always acted like a loyal dog and thinks he couldn't cross some lines because of the Duchess, as he only had skills. He felt that if he got noticed becoming too involved, he could get excommunicated, so he said he informed him because he seemed unaware of courtesies. The protagonist reminded him of the Agnes Duchy law that he should prove himself with his skills, so Babel told him that he was alright. His father thought he had changed as he was acting like a real knight because he wasn't convinced. He told Joshua that he would keep this law in mind, and the protagonist realized that his eyes changed after the last duel. Earl told Duke that he wished to evacuate the position of the formal Agnes heir. Everyone was shocked and wondered if he lost confidence after the talented competitor arrived. But he wanted to have a fair competition, so the Duke agreed to him, so the meeting ended and left. Later, in Duchess Vanessa's room, he is frustrated knowing that Joshua is going to the academy with his mother. Because Earl Babel gives up on his position, she worries that he is her everything. Chiffon assumed he should do his best to convince, but she knew he was stubborn and blamed the protagonist for everything. She asked him what Joshua was doing tomorrow, and he stated that Duke was taking him to the Lock territory. She thought the barren territory would take 2 days to get there. Chiffon said that Duke wanted to take care of the creatures in the Black Forest. She assumed he left after returning, so she instructed him to notify her that she wanted to dine with him before he left. Later, while the man prepared to depart, he looked at his dawn ring and remembered his meeting with the Duke Agnes, who told him before leaving that he had to throw away the name Agnes, so he gave him the ring as a gift. He stated that he received this ring after helping the owner of the Magic Tower once, and he assumed that if it was the ring of the Magic Tower, this might be the artifact created by the owner. When mana is infused into the ring, it instantly equips the wearer with armor, and Duke tells him that he will learn to use it after investing in the mana. He questioned because it was supposed to be given to the family's heir, but he told him not to be mistaken as he was lending him this because it would be a waste of energy as it would rot in the warehouse. He said enchanted armor, with ab insignia representing each family, would be put on him if he used this ring. This would hide his identity from the insect, and his fake identity is now as heir of an anonymous viscount. He instructed him to select a suitable name, and he realized that the reason behind this might be not to affect Duke Agnew's house. The Duke asked him if he had resent him, but he didn't know about this and thought he would never expect to die in vain in the war between empires after 10 years. He barely saw Duke Agnes's face in his previous life, so he slowly forgets the resentment as time heals the wound. While he was still thinking, Caesar arrived as he heard that he was departing to the capital, Acadi, after the subjugation. He suggested visiting him as it would be helpful as the imperial family could recommend a knight who would protect them to the Order of Imperial Knights, so he would be able to serve the imperial knights without taking the exams and could enjoy the privilege of eliminating 10 years of compulsory service period after passing it. He wanted to tell him that he was greedy, so he wanted to give them this offer, but he found them disgusting as their laughter was mixed with pretense and hypocrisy. But he had to join the Imperials to get another beloved weapon from his previous life because his gun was sleeping in the secret warehouse of the palace. He said he would think about it later because he was busy now while departing. He thought he wouldn't suffer like in the past, but he would suffer this time. In the lead of Duke Agnes, the Black Creature Forest was formed at a rapid pace. It consisted of a reasonably small group led by the Duke of the country, which is the group of the Order of Crimson Knights, and Armand, the best 4th-class mage in Agnes Duchy. Later, at the castle of Lock territory, Robin, the former senior knight, greeted him and apologized as he had to suffer even after his retirement. Viscount Vigo arrived with his daughter and greeted him, but Duke found him the pain in the neck. He scolded Robin as he didn't inform him. But Duke changed the topic, talking about his weight, and the protagonist wonders if he is terrible at reading the room. Viscount looks at Babel and thinks he become more handsome. Then, he looks at the protagonist and wonders who he is. Chiffon tells him that he is the second son of the Lord, and he thinks he is mannerless and wonders when Lady Vanessa has such a grown son. But he whispered that he was not her son. He was mortified and wondered what bloodline he belonged to, so he told him that he didn't belong to the noble family. After knowing that, he glared at him like a dirty kid. Duke gets frustrated as he looks at his son hatefully and asks if he doesn't have something urgent to attend to, but tells him that he prepared food for them. He says that his knights are strong and asks them for confirmation, but they say no. While he was leaving, Vigo requested to accompany him, although he was weak and wouldn't be much help. But he wanted to stand and watch because he was the landlord, and his knights wanted that, too. He asked him if his daughter would stay behind alone, but he said that she would help them. Duke was shocked to know that he would put his child in danger, but she also wanted to help him. She used magic, and a spirit appeared that made them, so he told them that he recently knew that she could use the spiritual arts. He thought it was the magic that only those born with spiritual skills could use. The sages are rarer than magicians, and he never knew he would meet one here. He never heard her name, but she looked familiar. The Duke decided to depart and instructed that his knights would lead and others would stay between them, and he thought that it would be good if he got a sage. The protagonist felt he would figure out about her while they were together, so he would remember it if it was crucial to his plan. Meanwhile, at the Avalon Empire throne room, the man asked if the Black Wind's skill twice, despite being a B-rank expert, even succeeded in the counterattacking. He asked about Evergrande opinion and wanted to know the words as the Empire's best magicians, not as a knight. He asked him how far that boy went, and the knight explained in terms of the Imperial Knights and said that he had to fight Valmon himself, but he fought him one-on-one. There was no way he would lose. He thought that if he were one of the most outstanding people in the Empire, he would lose to opponents like Evergrande, but Valmon and Joshua aren't the same. He wonders if he is still determining if he could win against him, and the knight says that the protagonist will be able to defeat him in 10 years, but not now. He asked if he could win against him alone in the duel, and he didn't reply, so he laughed and thought he would have gone to see him. Emperor Marcus snapped to call Jaqen and ordered him to ensure the boy stayed at the palace for some time. He told him that the prince was already making the preparations as the recommendation letter was delivered to the knights by him. The emperor thought that the 11th and 12th battalions were always unpleasant. They were a ragtag bunch that came because of recommendation. But he instructed him to report everything about him. He thought that if he was that talented, he was suitable for it while surrounded by the beasts fighting with them, and felt that he was screwed. They set up camp in the forest and were going to discuss the plan, but Vigo rushed to him. He said that the creature was right in front of them and that they would initiate the surprise attack in such an open space. Duke asked him how much he knew about the function of the forest and how much attention he had been paying to the woods because he was confused. He was clarified about the time the monsters rush. At night, the monsters spill out of the forest like water and are vicious at the time of the red moon. But the current problem is that their attacks have been getting shorter. He said they don't need to rush in and will come out at night. And Vigo was expecting this from Duke and didn't think about it this way. He instructed his sons to get to their post, and they gathered the woods after the other knights were done. They left with him as he was still in progress. After they left, he thought it was his last chance and went inside the forest, holding his spear while Vigo watched him. Genesis Stone is a magic enhancement item that contains the power of creation, and it is believed that this stone covers every element, but the world has only discovered 5 of them. Those 5 are yet to be found, and they can enhance first circle magic into third circle magic, an item coveted by everyone. He remembered that in the past, there were Genesis stones in the deepest part of the forest. If he could find them, he would be able to control his abundance of advancement of power. An hour passed, but he still didn't reach the center of the forest and was stunned as he saw the black ogre that was blocking the path. He knew he needed to be at least a B-rank knight to take it head on. But it was the solitary monsters, so if he filled Lukia with those energies as he did at the test, he could kill the ogre with no time. He wanted to finish it in a single blow, but the monster roared after the red moon appeared. Its pressure was unbearable, and the beast attacked him. He was stunned, wondering how it found him, but he had to dodge the attack to save himself, and he ran away to hide as he would lose heads. He hid after using the technique the Assassin King had taught him rather than concentrating his mana on the target. He had to maneuver it as if it was covering his body, and it would become one with the objects around after he stopped breathing and forgot his surroundings. His technique worked because the monster didn't notice him and passed by, so he rushed to the forest center and climbed the tree branch but tripped. So the black ogre noticed him, and the monsters from the surroundings also appeared, and he wondered if this was a good thing for him. He wants to test his spearmanship, so he lifts his spear and attacks them using the magic spearmanship stage 2 second form gust. He thought he would have appropriately achieved magic spearmanship stage 2, but he guessed not. He could not bring out half of his power that he could generally do, as he thought there was a limit to the young child's body. Seeing the monster's direction, he couldn't rest like this as they would meet up at the knight's camping, so he needed to find the Genesis to come and join the knight. The knight was on his own when the monster suddenly attacked him, so they announced the emergency. As the demons were attacking the knight, they instructed the medics to take the injured to the dorm. Babel shot the monsters, and one of the knights also killed them. He wondered who he was as he never knew someone skilled would be in the Crimson Knights. He heard the noise and looked back where 1,000 monsters were rushing toward them. After seeing that enormous number send a shiver down their spines, they wanted to retreat. Chiffon scolded and warned them they would receive heavy punishment if they left the campsite, so he ordered the Crimson Knights to form the line. The battle between the monsters and the knights begins even after killing many of them. There is no end to their number because of the sudden appearance of the red moon that is supposed to appear the following midnight. The B-rank monster roared from behind, and he was stunned to see such a high-level monster around him, so he gushed to split it in half. But the beast attacked and threw him back. Knights were worried to see the black ogre approaching as they might get torn into shreds if they got in its way. And the number of other monsters was also not decreasing. Chiffon ordered them to retreat as they became more alive due to the red moon. But Duke Agnes appeared and said that they shouldn't lose their composure, so he decided to take care of them, and with the slight blow of his spearmanship, most of the monsters died. While the remaining were terrified, Chiffon was stunned to know the power of one of the 9 stars of the continent, Master Agnes. After killing the monsters, he passed between them, reached the cliff, and looked down, whereas Duke killed the beast. And his son was stunned, so Vigo told him that his father was that powerful. He wished he would become like that because his blood ran through his veins, and he thought it made sense that he was surprised. He was a child who had never seen something like that, and he remembered the protagonist and went to the commander to ask about him. He wonders if he runs away to live on his own. Knights were stunned and asked if he run away and thought he was different from Babel. He thought it was too much even though he had that fantastic blood running in him, and he shouted at them as the battle hadn't ended yet. They rushed toward them to kill them while the monsters ran away. Knights were amazed to see them like that. They were shocked as the demons were killed by someone and wondered what the matter was. Then, some black ogres appeared and roared. So they spread out, but the monsters attacked them. But the knight told them not to retreat and fight. The commander thought they could eliminate them, but the horde of black ogres appeared. Then he felt the strange aura, and the protagonist used the thunderbolt and killed it. And they were stunned as Joshua Agnes killed the black ogre with twice its normal strength due to the red moon with a single blow. Vigo was more astonished, asked him what trip he used, and wondered how he appeared at good timing after hiding all the time. Because he did not want to believe this, he assumed that the Duke had killed it and ordered his man to go and help the Duke. They were also amazed by his timing and thought the Duke killed the monster because the ogre was challenged to defeat by the B-ranked knights. He doesn't want to be looked down upon, so he surprises them and rushes toward the monster to attack it. While thinking that although he became able to use Bronto's power of decree, he wasn't sure how far his body would be able to handle this and killed the ogre using the thunderbolt wind. Vigo was surprised, and everyone realized he killed the black ogre even though he was a sea-raked knight. They never heard about Mana like that and wondered if he was the magic swordsman. Duke wonders how he is standing and assumes he doesn't want to show himself as weak. Armin realizes why he is keeping an eye on him because he is fantastic. He told Duke that seeing how he uses double casting that requires the higher class than the third class, he is the monster who can change the country's history. While talking to him, he left as he saw the protagonist collapsing while the beast was attacking him, so he killed the monster and embraced Joshua. He opened his eyes and looked at his father, thought it was not that bad, then closed it. When he became conscious again, he saw fire. The people were calling for help, and he saw Agnes Duchy and wondered what was happening, and the building was collapsing. He wondered if this was a dream, but it felt too real to be a dream. He saw Babel coming out of the building and wondered if it was the scene where Agnes Duchy was wiped out. He wonders why he has such a dream as this would happen 10 years later, and if he has a precognitive plan because of Bronto's power. He felt the strange wind, after which Annabelle Grace appeared with a high-level spirit wind sea lion, which startled him, and he remembered the daughter of Vigo. He remembered something like that happened between them and wondered if her master was also there, but he was frustrated because he could not hear their conversation. He went close to them, and Babel told her that August wouldn't kneel to such a breed organization. But the man smiled, and the sea lion attacked him. When he looked at his face closely, he realized he was Draxiavel Grace. He woke up and was shocked that his dream was closer to a precognitive dream than an ordinary one. He got up and wondered how much time had passed. He wanted to get out of bed, but his body was still unable to tolerate it. He entered the second stage after the first stage in magic spearmanship, but it was similar to the best C-ranked knights, and he assumed he could go against the B-ranked knights if this were the power of his magic spearmanship against the monsters. He presumed it would be because of the Bronto Stone and the precognition, so he decided to dig further into the Genesis Stone. The Duke asked him if it was interesting that the red moon, which looked like it would swallow the whole world, was now casting a wonderful moonlight. He told him he would be heading to the academy after returning to Duchy, but his identity wouldn't be Agnes. Instead, he is the son of the fallen Frederick Visconti, someone who desperately trying to raise the fallen Visconti. He agreed because it would do no good to him if he grabbed all the attention, as he had to focus on retaining all of his strength. Duke asked him how he knew the cursed name like Draxiavel Grace, but he decided to leave so that he could rest first, and they would leave and return to the state tomorrow. Meanwhile, in the secret room of the Loch Castle, Vigo asks the commander if the lady knows about him, and he thinks that she is turning a blind eye to such a threat. Chiffin told him that she didn't have the opportunity as Joshua to do the errands in the stable, but his powers suddenly awakened. He was stunned because Babel was revived after the close instruction of the Duke. He was astonished as he didn't get the facilities like Babel, yet he defeated the Black Ogre, which most C-ranked knights could not do. He told him the knights thought he was magic, but Vigo didn't believe that and supposed he had contracted with a high-ranking demon. But he was sure that something like that didn't happen as he was with him all the time and didn't sense any demonic energy. But he decided to keep an eye on him because his daughter Anna Vel Grace was also in his academy, so he could quickly get the information from him. He suggested he pay attention to this matter before he started desiring the position of the heir, as things would get complicated, and left. Later, the man rushed to her at the Agnes estate and informed her that Joshua was returning after completing the subjugation. She was sad, then he wondered why she was unhappy and asked him why he was worried because he didn't like him. But things changed because he was the son of the concubine and the first person to use the mana at age 10. He told her that although they had enough wealth, they couldn't buy some things and asked her if she knew why Duke Pontier sent them there, and she said that it was because of the mercenaries' king. He is the sword master of a commoner who rose to rank and is one of the 12th superhumans who could compete for the absolute seat of the 9 stars. But they were informed that he secretly joined the Marks Cromwell. He boasted the most incredible wealth after the Duke. They constantly butted heads, which came to the point that a battle about territory could break between two families. He told her that if the rumors about the engagement were spread, they could surpass the other party, so they were trying to engage her by engaging her with a label to get Agnes's help. But he still felt bitter about this. She wonders if she needs to ask him for help, but he tells her there is no need, as the pride of the noble family matters. He knows she is pretending to leave Babel, so he tells her not to sacrifice too much for her family. He told her to talk to the protagonist as the way she acted toward him didn't feel fake, so he wanted them to have a severe conversation, so she instructed him to arrange a dinner between them before he left. On the night when the Crimson Knight Order returned, a grand feast was prepared at the Agnes estate. Everyone was discussing his skill, and he started calling him his liege, but he felt uncomfortable. He wanted to refuse to take the oath, but he believed he would be that ignorant. The protagonist told him to head back as he tried to rest. After he left, he thought people wanted to learn from him, but he refused because he wanted to become his sword and was afraid he would become vigilant if he knew that. He remembered the painful memories of the betrayal in the past and grabbed his head. Then the man arrived and asked if he should call a doctor. After hearing he was okay, he told him that he had the dinner arranged by Duchess Vanessa, and that his mother Lucia was also attending. He entered the dining room and was glad to see his mother while Lady Vanessa talked to him. But he ignored her and didn't greet her. Chiffin told him to behave in a manner but glared at him. After her mother told him to greet her, he greeted her and introduced himself, but she was pissed off after hearing him use the name Agnes but decided to hold on since she wouldn't see him after today as he was going to the capital. His mother was stunned as she didn't know about this, so Chiffin told him that he was recognized as the knight, so the Duke was sending him to the academy. She was so pleased to know this. Lady Vanessa said that she arranged this dinner to congratulate him and rang the bell to set the food. The protagonist looked at the food and smirked. She told him to eat it, but he ignored it. Lucia instructed him to be respectful, but Vanessa thought that dinner might make them uncomfortable and said that she planned this dinner to grow closer to them, so she was grateful to her. While he was about to eat, he stood and apologized to her for not properly introducing himself and thanking them for taking care of them. But she didn't care, so she told him to eat dinner. She reached them, but they didn't accept her kind gesture, and he felt uncomfortable because they had more delicious and variety of food than her, so he wanted to have the same dinner. He encountered this method many times. The poison was cleverly put in their food and is of the type that isn't easily detectable and doesn't leave a trace. But she refused to eat with him, making the excuse of dieting. But he told her that she had a perfect figure that didn't need any maintenance. So she realized that he might come to know about the poison, and she thought he would suspect her of refusing again. He asked her what she was thinking and if she put the poison in their food. Chiffon talked harshly to him as if he was disrespecting him, but he told him that he was the one who was disrespecting him and asked if he forgot to whom he was talking. He could feel the killing intent from him, and the protagonist asked her if she put the poison in their food. Chiffon's reaction showed that, but he got furious and drew the sword to kill him. The protagonist asked how he dared to draw his sword toward him after putting the poison in their food, but his aura was unbearable. He didn't want to pull his sword as he was threatened about his growth in the future, so he decided to kill him. Meanwhile, the prince was reading the book in the garden when the knight appeared and showed him the letter from Agnes regarding his decision. He thought it would be insolent to open the letter, so he brought it to him and wondered if he accepted his offer. The knight believed he might have taken it as it was the place everyone dreamed of, but the prince read the letter, laughed, and thought he was interesting. When they were ready to fight, Duke asked them what they were doing, and then Lady Vanessa told him she invited Lucia and the protagonist for dinner because she heard he was sending them to the capital. He thought for a while and looked at the poisoned food and asked him how long he would stay like that, so he put his sword in the shield. Duke told Joshua to rest as they were going to leave early tomorrow, and he left with his mother. Vanessa asked him why he was acting like this. He asked her if she resented him, and she said yes, as he was paying extra attention to that commoner, and never once loved her because all he cared about was his family. She never complained to him because of their arranged marriage, but she didn't want to stand still if her child would be victimized, and she thought he would know basic courtesy. He was startled and asked her if someone who knew basic courtesy did something like this. They were shocked and asked what he was talking about, so he asked them if they thought he would never know about it. The protagonist went to his room and felt his mother would be sad because he didn't tell her about the capital and thought he was still worried. Kane told him to open the door and ask about the meal, and he wondered how he knew, so he explained that he had asked the butler because he wasn't in his room. He thought it wise to head to the capital to help him grow and learn from his father, Duke Agnes. He questioned if he came to say this, so he told him that he wanted to ask the favor and requested to give him the honor of serving him as his liege. He told him that he had come to the wrong place because he was planning on playing the knights as his path was filled with bloody criticism. But he still wanted to follow and believe him. He lifted his sword and said he wanted to bet his life to serve him, so he requested that he give him that chance. He grabbed his sword and agreed. The following day, he left with the Duke and asked if he was okay with one knight as he might need more servants. The protagonist asked him if he had forgotten how he lived till now so one person would be enough on their way. Cheryl rushed to them and requested to stop, and she greeted him and apologized for meeting him late. She acted so manly that he said he liked her old tomboyish self. She worked as an ordinary person when Duke asked him if she wanted to go to the capital, but she had to visit the Cox family. She went to Joshua and said that she wanted to tell him something, and he wondered what she was up to. She gave him the symbol that belonged to her family. She requested to visit her family when he reached Akari, but her knight was shocked as she was not supposed to give it too quickly to anyone. He inquired the reason behind this, so she told him to consider it an invitation. The knights were gossiping that she might like him. He thought no one could resist such a proposal, so he realized he couldn't refuse to take this as the rumors would spread, and he would get more attention. While he pondered, she pretended to cry and asked if he intended to humiliate her, so he comprehended that she might come to him prepared, so he accepted the symbol and hurried to leave. Before leaving, Duke asked her if he could also visit her or if this offer was just for his son. She said of course, so they bid them farewell and left. Meanwhile, at the Grand Imperial Palace of Avalon Empire Kataka, they knew about their empire and assumed they would reach there in 3 days. The knight told the king that Joshua rejected the order of the Imperial Knight. He was stunned as he dared to refuse the order of the most substantial empire in the world. He wonders if he thinks of himself as more capable of taking over the Agnes family. But the knight doesn't think this based on the letter because he said that he doesn't need the prince's recommendation and would obey the emperor's laws. He laughed because following the law meant he would defeat the honorable knights of the palace with his strength. 4 days later, at the Anus family mansion in the capital, his mother was stunned to know they would live in such a beautiful palace. Kane thought that the villa had stayed the same even though much time had passed, so the protagonist asked if he had come there. He told him that he had come here once following the Duke when he was a child. The protagonist was astonished to know his father was that close to him, but he never heard his name in his past life and assumed that he might have disappeared along with the downfall of the Agnes family. He saw that few people were around and that Kane could care for his mother, so he wanted to solve this issue. He told Kane that he would have something to do, so he was leaving and instructed him to take care of his mother, and he thought he might be looking around. That night, in the Akardi downfall area, he didn't change while entering the palace. He was curious about how people would look at him. The man thought he might have lost his way and offered to leave him, but he was stunned when he said he wanted to find the red coin buried deep in the rough